Okay, well, let's get into, I don't think I forgot anybody. I wanted to talk about backup offers. And so I first wanted to talk, most of this is about being on the buyer side, and then a little bit about why you'd want to do backup offers when you're on the seller side. So there's two different ways that a backup offer happens. First off, you could have it where there's multiple offers, like 10 offers on the property, 2 offers on the property, whatever, and yours isn't chosen. Okay. So multiple offers and you choose to go into backup offer. Or there's a property that's just under contract and maybe there was just one contract that came in and your buyer is considering it even though it's under contract, and you can write a contract on a property that's already under contract. So some of the positives, I was trying to brainstorm today about all the reasons as a buyer's agent you'd want to get your buyer under a backup contract. One plus is you can keep looking. You just keep looking for other houses. You've tied this one out. It takes some of the stress out of looking. You're like, look, I have a backup offer on this house. So that it feels really good that if I was to be able to buy that house. So it's like a little bit less anxiety than if they don't have anything. Another positive is there's no money down. So generally speaking, I don't think that I've ever written a backup offer where I had my buyer have earnest money put down. And in our clauses that I inherited from John Mahoney back when he was in my seat, there was a clause for when you do give earnest money for a backup offer. So I know people have done it over the years, but it's not really traditional now, at least, to ever give earnest money until you go into primary position. So there's no harm in it. It doesn't cost you money. It also creates a relationship between you and your buyer. So I got into the market right before, I got it to be a real estate agent a few years before the market was really hot. And I wasn't really that amazingly good by the time the market was hot. So I didn't do that great. But I realized as a newer agent and somebody also for me, I was a lot younger than a lot of my clients, that if I could spend a couple of hours, it's kind of like you want to when you're doing showings with people. You spend some time with someone and they form a relationship with you, and then they're more likely to work with you if this one doesn't work out. They're more tied to you, so they might be less likely to use buy a for sale by owner without using you. They might be less likely to just call an agent on their sign. They're probably going to work with you, right? So it gives you also gives you a reason to communicate more frequently. So you have those buyers that you have no reason to call them because nothing's on the market and you have no reason to do anything to pick up the phone. You're like, what am I supposed to say? There's nothing new has happened. But if you're under contract, you can say, okay, there's another reason to call. I haven't seen anything new on the market, but with that offer or contract, I know that their inspection is coming up in a few days. So I'll call you as soon as I hear anything about whether it turned out okay or whether they got through the contract. So if you can see that, it just gives you another reason to bond with them. And it really only takes you a couple of hours to do it at most. You might get in for, another plus is you might be able to get the contract or the property for a little cheaper than you would otherwise. So the psychology behind that would be the seller it's priced at $700 and they have it under contract for $690,000, and they're feeling the seller might not have sold a lot of houses before, or maybe their agent isn't that good. And they're like, oh yeah, this one's in the bag. You ever have a friend that tells you, I sold my house? And you go, wait, you sold your house? Like, I didn't know it was for sale. And they go, oh yeah, we got it under contract today. So they're like already packing and moving and it just went under contract. So sellers sometimes think it's in the bag if they get it under contract. So they're more likely to say, I have my contract for $690,000. So yeah, let's get a backup offer signed at $680. I'm fine. It's never going to go to that. So sometimes you get a better deal. You also won't lose out. So there is a psychology where your buyer might say, well, why? I don't think I really want to write a backup offer. No, I didn't get it. That makes me sad. Call me if it falls out of contract. Well, a week goes by, the contract hasn't fallen out, but now here comes a new buyer that's interested in this property and they're cash and you had a loan, right? So you might as well seal the deal, get it if you like this property, buyer, get it under contract so that we can kind of seal it up. I can't think of a better way to say it. And that way, if somebody else sneaks in with better conditions, like they don't need a loan, especially in this market, but you ever do a Paragon search for solds, look at how many in La Plata County, even outside of the resort market, look at how many homes sell for cash. So if you're working with people with a loan, say you might want to just get this under contract. Nobody else has a backup contract in. We can get it under, you can keep looking. And that way, if somebody comes in with cash, you're not having to compete against them. Because that was always such a bummer when it was multiple offers back when the market was like 06, 07, when my poor buyer is just trying to buy their first home and they're totally qualified. I remember one lady, she was a nurse and she had like really good job and she had plenty of money in the bank. She had done everything right. And there'd be 6 offers on every property and like 3 of them would be cash. And it's like, how can I compete with that? So I hope you can understand that. Once they have you in place, once the seller has you in place as a backup position, they can't kick you out. You're there. You're automatically in if they don't get that other offer closed. So if you have multiple offers that come in and you're one of them, and let's say 6 offers come in, 7 offers come in, and yours is pretty close to the other ones, but they picked somebody else. Now, of those 6 offers, 1 person's in primary position. There's 5 other people left. Probably 3 of them will drop out and say, I'm just, you know what? Forget you. I'm going to go find something else. And you say, hey, my people would like to have a backup offer. That's usually how it works. Like some people drop out of the running sort of. And if they're interested, what ends up happening usually is, especially if you're a newer agent, the seller's agent will say, I'm going to counter you back and I'm going to put you into backup position. So it's really messy, but it's fine. So what they counter you is they have the timeline and they're going to change all the dates, right? Because you can't have hard dates with a lot of things when you're in backup position because you don't know when these things are going to happen. You're not going to spend money on an inspection per se if you don't even know if you're getting the house. So they're going to counter you. But when you're in that position as a buyer's agent, now you're on their timeline, right? So imagine if there's 6 offers came in and you get a message from the seller that says, you didn't make it, but we'd like to put you in backup position. And they go, here's the counter, just sign here and we'll get you into backup. And the counter has all the dates. They put in their own dates, but now you're on their timeline. And what are you going to do? Are you going to go, no, that date isn't going to work for my person? Probably you're not going to do that. You're going to say, sign, just get it into backup. Just do it. So now when you become into primary position, you're kind of on whatever that seller's agent wrote into the contract. Does that make sense? So it can be kind of messy. You're sort of on whatever they decided would be a good idea at the time, but it still works out. Now, if it's already under contract, okay, wait, let me back up. If you're in that position and the seller agent, there's 2 things they could do. They could call you and say, we'd like to put you in backup position, or they might not even think to tell you that because maybe it's a newer agent. They'll go, oh no, we got a contract. Okay, see ya. So you'd be like, hey, I think my buyers would like to go under, they'd like to go into backup position. Would that be okay with you? Can you ask your sellers? Always ask the sellers first. Don't be like spending all this time writing a backup offer and then they aren't interested anyway because it closes in a week. So you would want to say, may I write a clean offer for the backup? That would be the best case scenario, right? Because then now you're on your timeline and what actually works for your people, okay? But now let's consider if it's already under contract. It went under contract days ago. Your people come to town and they go, God, I'd really like to have that house, but it's under contract. You're going to want to talk about that before you even go out on showings. It's okay to look at houses that are under contract. Just call and say, hey, would your people consider a backup? I have people coming this weekend. I see your house just went under contract last week. Could we still see it? Because we might want to write a backup. So if your people are in that position, they decide they want the house. Obviously, you first want to ask if the seller is open to a backup offer. And here's the deal. If it's going to close in 6 days and it's cash, like, no, you probably don't want to spend all that time, right? But if it just went under contract and maybe it's going to be 2 weeks, or 3 weeks or 4 weeks, like, I don't know, just ask your buyers, maybe do it. What's the big deal? It's not that big of a deal to do. I don't know if I would do it if it was closing in 2 weeks, but anything can happen when they're going through their inspections, they're going through the association docs, any of that. And I do want to mention, because Luis was saying that, so he has the Crestview listing they got. Not only does the person want to live there, what, Luis, till June? The seller wants to live there till June, and they still have a full price, all cash backup offer on that house. Yep. So, I mean, my God, as a seller's agent, you can like totally rest assured you're going to get paid at some sort when you get that kind of thing in. So that's awesome. So for deadlines, when you're talking about deadlines, I'm going to pull this up on the screen. I'm going to go down here. So here's all the deadlines. Think about the ones you can get done. So you're not going to want to hand in your earnest money. You can't really get title, right? Because they need to put your name on the title or your buyer's name on the title. But could they look at the association documents and see if they like the subdivision? I mean, especially if it's up at like PERG or somewhere with really big covenants, or your people, they really want to have a horse and they're looking at Forest Lakes, or I don't know. You might want to go ahead and put a hard deadline in there so that your folks at least can decide they don't like the subdivision and move on. And that way you're not keep showing them houses in that subdivision. How about like, what I was thinking is the insurance deadline. You could get your insurance. You could get a couple quotes from State Farm and whoever. Maybe you wouldn't get a binder, but at least you would know whether it's too expensive to get insurance there. So that's something your folks could do. Here's some other ones I thought of. Off-record deadline. That would be a great one to get out of the way. So off-record deadline, there's like usually never anything that comes up for that unless the person, the seller has a survey on file that they're going to give you. That's off-record. Maybe there's like some easement they have to tell you about. I don't know. So off-record is one you can put a hard deadline in there. Property insurance, maybe due diligence. If there's something you wanted the seller to provide you, like, could you give me that engineering report that you mentioned in MLS? Make that a due diligence document, get it out of the way, have your people look at it and make sure they're still comfortable with it, because you might as well just decide you don't like the house while you're in backup position before you spend all the time to, or before you wait to see if you go into primary. So then try to figure out what can you schedule that you could get done really quick. So inspections would be a good one. Like maybe make your calls and say, I mean, you can't schedule the inspection, and you'd probably be buying the inspection from the person in primary position too, but try to figure out, okay, I know that if you went into primary position, you'd want to get X, Y, and Z done to check on before we closed on it, right? So maybe call those vendors and see how long it takes them to get an appointment so that you're not caught kind of with your pants down the day you go into primary position, making all these phone calls furiously and going, oh my God, I had no idea this would take 3 weeks. I just put all the dates to be X and I had no idea. So do your homework and try to get some of those things done, even if you're in backup position. But for the most part, you're waiting, right? So I'm going to go through this. Alternative earnest money deadline. I tie everything to calendar days, not business days. Business days, I did that for a little bit because I thought, ooh, then I can be all exact. If it happens on a Friday, I can say 3 days and it's business days and it's not going to be till that Wednesday. So I thought I was like being all smart. But then when you get into like the loan or something, then you're really going, okay, well, how many business days? It's just really confusing. You do whatever you want to do, but I did calendar days. So I would tell my folks, you can find out certain things from the primary position. You can find out from the listing agent when that property is actually going to get their inspections done, when their inspection objection is. So you know whether they're probably going to have a deal, right? You can find out when the loan is supposed to close or be solidified, right? And then you can find out when it's supposed to close. So earnest money.
Are those all things we just ask the selling agent?
Totally, the listing agent. And you don't have to do that before you're doing this, but I'm telling you, like, there's some information they'll give you so you can keep your people posted. That's like, there's no reason not to disclose that. But yep. Let's say you know that the primary position is going to close in 30 days. So when you're trying to figure out these deadlines, you just tell your folks, let's say this falls out of contract sometime in the next 30 days. How many days would it take you to drop off a check to me or to wire the funds for the earnest money? Now, sometimes they will even leave you a check. Let's say they're visiting town from Dallas. They'll just write you a check right there. Just stick it in their file, keep it somewhere safe. And that way you can walk it over and give it to them the second it goes under primary position. But you want to find out, are you going to Timbuktu anytime in the next 30 days that if this contract started, we would have trouble getting things done? And if not, alternative earnest money deadline, I mean, if it's being wired, give them a few days because sometimes that takes a while to like show up. But with record title, really, it's like 2 days. It shouldn't, all you have to do is the listing agent would call and say, hey, it fell out of contract. We have a new buyer. Here's the backup contract. They already give it to you, and they should be able to turn that title right around, okay? So same with off record, I'm going to say get that done. Just be done with that before this goes into primary. And then obviously I will teach you about contracts early in 2021 of how to write these things. But I always give 7 days for people to look at things once they're done, take it to an attorney, that sort of thing. But to get this stuff, I'm thinking they've already given it to the primary position, right? So they have it on record. All they have to do is push send to you and they can get it to you. So make all your deadlines for the seller to give you stuff immediately. The property disclosure, get that done. Get it signed. Get the square footage disclosure signed. If you're doing all these things that show that you really want the property, it's also helping them decide, negotiate that first deal. They're like, God, these buyers are jerks. But these backup people, they've already done their disclosures. They're already looking into all the documents. They've already decided their insurance is okay. So it just kind of puts it in a good light. New loan, that's a big one to know. So at least have your people shop around and decide which lender they'd probably go with, right? So that they can get their loan app in within a day or so of getting it under contract. And always assume you're going to get that call at 8 o'clock on Friday night. So don't be putting the next day for the loan app deadline. You need at least till the Monday. So always assume in your head it's going to be worst possible scenario. And then appraisal, again, I don't know. Let's say you're having a 30-day closing. I don't know what the deadlines are right now, but I would assume that you're doing 21 days on this one because you still have to get it ordered and all that. That it doesn't speed up your closing too much. If you're getting a survey, at least find out if they're going to want a survey, right? So that you can clean this part up. Inspection objection, you still have to wait for the inspector because they're not going to, you usually don't know, oh, the deal's shaky. I got to start lining these things up. It's usually a phone call that says, we just terminated, you're in primary position, give us the earnest money, and you're going, ah! So then you still have to give yourself time to get that inspector in there. Or you could probably, if they've gotten past their inspection, you might be able to buy the inspection from the other person. Okay, so that's how you do it with the deadlines. You're actually writing in here 30 days. Does that make sense? So you're writing 20 days, not like 20. You're writing the word days, okay? So that's one thing you have to know. So when you're doing this, what I was thinking of telling you is your brain just has to work differently. Instead of saying, okay, it's September 30th, October 30th, whatever it is. This will be November 30th, and then consider also we have the holidays coming up. That's a whole nother thing to try to figure out deadlines. So the two hardest things in real estate, I think, are with brain function is to figure out deadlines in a contract and then figure out how long it's going to take your buyer to get around a house when you've never met them yet, right? You're taking them out to Forest Lakes. You're like, oh, is this going to take 1 hour or like 4 hours to take them out here? So that's all you do with the deadlines. And then the only other thing that really changes in the contract. So I'm sorry, I'm making you dizzy. This is still the same, right? So you're still putting the purchase price, you're still putting new loan, you're still putting the earnest money down, you're putting $2,000, $5,000, whatever. You just don't have to give the money yet. So it's still written as a normal offer, which makes it so easy to counter and put it into backup position. So this is what changes. So if you haven't written an offer yet, there might be a couple of you. Clauses is over here. So there's a whole bunch of boxes where you can stick a clause, but this is where you go. And you just go down, and you should be doing this with every single contract, right? Even when I was 12 years in the business, I would go down here, and you're always forgetting something, right? So you go down and you kind of scroll through and go, backup, I don't need that. Broker license, don't need that. Contingent, oh, I don't need that. And you kind of pick the ones that make sense for this transaction. It's a good way to review it. But the one you're looking for is called backup contracts. You click and insert, but I already did that. So this is how it's written. This is a backup contract and is subordinate to a primary contract between seller and a third party. If the primary contract is terminated for any reason, seller shall give written notice thereof to buyer, and buyer shall have X calendar days. Now this is tied to the date you had right here, right? So if you have 2 days here, then you write 2 days down there. You don't want to mess that one up. You have 2 days or whatever after notice is given in which to deposit the earnest money per section 4.3, at which time this backup contract shall become the primary contract. So you're not in backup, you're not in primary contract until that happened. So they terminate and they say, hey, we want you to go into primary. You still interested? And then you walk down the earnest money 2 days later and that money is deposited, boom. But you're automatically, does that make sense? At any time prior to depositing the earnest money, buyer shall have the right to terminate this backup contract for any reason by giving written notice thereof to seller. So what happens when you're, oh, I'm just going to write this down because I don't want to, forget, but I don't want to get off track. Now, what the clause doesn't say is how to read those deadlines up at the top. So I just wrote this, and anything that's kind of like this is going to be fine. I mean, I'm sure Mike Aronson has his own way of doing this. I just kind of typed this up. All deadlines in paragraph 3.1, so you want to say what paragraph you're talking about, specified by X days shall be in calendar days from the date this contract becomes the primary contract. I only capitalize this because you could also decide that you want to work like business days. So that's where you just put calendar or business. You don't have to capitalize it. So does that make sense? That's the only thing you need to know about how to write a backup contract, really. And if you forget this, you can just see me and I'll write something up. It'll probably be different than that. Yep.
Calendar days. What if one of your days it falls on a Saturday or a Sunday?
Aha, great question. So then
just moves over because of that sentence up top.
It goes to this,
okay.
Right? So if you had your computation, this is the only time that you have to. Good catch, because I didn't remember to say that. Always do will for a backup offer. So you run your business the way you want. I always teach this in the contract class, whether you decide to put will or will not for most contracts you do. Pick one. It doesn't matter, but do the same in every contract so you don't get messed up, right? I always did will not. And it's because I'm like, the date's the date. And then once I had it land on the 4th of July and I totally didn't realize, and I ended up kind of messing up for my buyer. But it doesn't matter what you usually do. Just make sure when you're doing a backup contract that it will extend to the next business day. So that means if you wrote 2 days and that's on a Saturday and you were supposed to walk the earnest money down on a Saturday, but you did press will, you're good. And that means you can just hand it in on Monday and you're all good. Does that make sense? But if you put will not, then you'd have to walk it down on Saturday and you better get a receipt for it.
So I have another question.
Yeah.
In regards to the earnest money, and like your example was 2 days, what if, like that's a local person, they could just write you a check and you take it over there and everything's good. But what if your person is from out of town? Do they wire it or can they mail you a check?
They can totally leave a check with you. They can totally.
Yeah, but they haven't. I'm in a backup position on something, and so I don't know. Like for earnest money, would I have them wire it?
Well, they could wire it early, but no, you just have them wire it. So you'd adjust it. So you just talk to them. You always have to talk to them. How are you going to get? Well, you have to talk to them because when you wrote the contract, it says, how are you going to get your earnest money to me? So if you put wire, you just have to tell them, okay, you said you're going to wire this earnest money. So what's the longest delay you'd have if I called you on any given day in the next month that it would take you to get to the bank? What if you're like out hiking and then you want to go away for a weekend or something? Would you be able to call your bank and get it done from where you're at? And they go, no, we have this one trip and we're going to be camping and we're not going to have cell service. You go, that's fine. Tell me when those dates are. And then just adjust your deadline and put 5 days, 6 days. But you wouldn't really be in primary position till that happens and it goes into first. Does that make sense? You try to tighten it up, but life is life. And sometimes it takes longer to get things to people. But they can also say, I'll wire it. You can always press both. So wire or check, right? And you could, oh wait, they don't take personal checks anymore, do they? At the title companies. So that seals that deal. I don't think they do with out-of-state things. So it has to be a wire, I think. No ACH, none of that stuff. So
Yeah, I think they take local checks. from
local
banks.
checks only. So yeah, so then it would have to be a wire. So I'm sure the seller's agent would understand if it takes a little bit. Let me see. So you just have to have your brain work a little bit differently with a backup. So seller, if you're on the seller side, why the heck not would you not want a backup? It just makes you so much better. And when I was a listing agent, back when times were good, I always got a backup offer. It just felt so good to just get that done. I'd be encouraging, say it's a new agent and they go, God, my buyer's really interested. How good is your contract going? Or like, it looks okay. This is how I would respond. Looks okay, but we got some deadlines to go through. They still have to get their fine. I'm just not, I'd always kind of bend it towards, you'd be wise to get a backup offer in. And they go, oh, really? Yeah, just, why don't you go show it? I'm going to encourage you to go show it. And I mean, don't do it to somebody if you really think it's going to close, but always encourage people to write backup offers. Also, you can use it, as a seller's agent, I always used it to keep the first primary buyer on the up and up. So let's say they're those kind of people that say, fine, I'll put it under contract for $350,000, but just you wait till I get under inspections. I'm going to ask them to get all this stuff done. But if you have a backup offer, they're probably a lot less likely to write you a long inspection objection. They're probably more likely to be like, let's just get this closed, because I could use that and say, hey, I'd call the first primary position buyer's agent and I'd say, hey, I just want to let you know we do have a backup offer in that we just put into backup, or we have people that we just put into backup position. And let's say it was cash, or let's say it was a higher price or anything like that. You always need your seller's permission, but there's nothing harming your seller by saying, just letting you know it's a cash offer. And you're telling them, don't screw around, like get this closed. So yes, that always helped me. You also can feel a lot less stressed on the seller side if you get that backup offer. Luis, you're going to be able to tell your people, get packing, get out of, or actually they don't want to pack because they're going to live there after closing, but you're fine to pack. You can feel comfortable with renting that U-Haul and getting the heck out of Dodge because you're going to have a closing. I've never had two offers. I've had backup offers that have pulled because they found something else they liked better, or they were just going to go with it and they could close quickly. But I've never had two people fail on a contract. Not that it couldn't happen. Will extend. Okay. And then if your folks, it's not okay for you to be in a primary position as a buyer's agent and have your people still be looking at other property, because you have to have that good faith. There's that good faith clause. That means if you're putting me into under contract buyer, you have to actually mean you want to close on this property. So it's not okay if your buyer says, hey, can you go show me those other houses tonight? I was thinking maybe we'd jump contracts. Like, not okay, right? They really lost their earnest money if they go ahead with something like that. It is totally okay if your people are in backup position and they're looking at other property. Totally okay. Really, you should pull your backup offer before you're putting another property under contract. Does that make sense? That's really good faith. You're saying, I'm sorry to the first seller. We're going to go ahead with this. But really, with life, I don't know how much it matters. It's not really harming the seller, right? I guess you could get into a position if you didn't do that where you get a phone, like you got this property under contract, they're calling you on the phone, and now this seller is telling you, hey, Hosea, you just got into primary position. Give us your earnest money check. And you're like, oh, shoot, we just wrote that offer. So I guess it could be a little bit of a pickle, but it's usually not. So if you end up wanting to go, I don't know what an attorney would say, but I would think if you go ahead and put something else in, like you make the offer and it goes under contract, just make the call immediately and say, hey, we're going to back up. We found another property we like and we're just going to go for it. We loved your home, but it didn't work out. That's fine. No harm, no foul. You didn't have to hand in your earnest money. So
Do you have to put something in writing to withdraw the backup offer?
Yes, you would follow up with an email. So written. Okay. Everything's always written.
But
so
there's
I call them.
There's like no CTM document or anything. Okay.
No, you're just saying we're going to walk, and it says you have an express right to do that. So it's just no big deal. But yes, everything should always be in writing so that you don't have hard feelings, because maybe the listing agent is out to dinner and they forgot to tell their people and then they find out the contract's failed. Yeah. So just do it all in writing. So Luis said, yeah, he had a contract at PERG that he just had multiple offers on, and they had an escalation clause, and that happens a lot. Sometimes sellers get turned off with escalation clauses, I found, but generally speaking, heck, they want as much money as they can get. But I have had a couple sellers that are the real soft type that'll be like, well, what do they think they can just get? Why didn't they just make a higher offer? Why did they have to put this escalation clause? But for the most, in most cases, sellers are fine with that. So what an escalation clause is like, I will pay $500 over the top offer, or I'll pay $2,000 over your best offer that you have. So that's becoming more and more common in this market for sure. Other questions about that or backup offers? Otherwise, I'm going to move on to okay, so there's two things I wanted to show you, and they're both useful in different times. And I was thinking when I told you I wanted to, wait, what are you seeing on my screen? Are you seeing this? The sales, are you seeing the contract, or hold on. I'm going to stop this. Let's do it again. Never know what I'm sharing. There we go. I was thinking this would be really useful. And then when I went to put the class together today, I realized that it might not be as useful in this market, but I just want you to know how to do this because I like to teach it once a year. So turnover rate is more useful. I thought I had one for absorption rate, but I'll have to make it up. Turnover rate is what happens when you're trying to do, let me think, you're trying to create a farm. This is an internal thing. It's not for buyers or sellers, but you're trying to create a farm list, and you really would like to have a subdivision where people actually sell their homes. I know I was talking to somebody last year about creating a farm area. It was Ignacio. I remember who it was, but it was like rural Ignacio or something. And we were looking at how the turnover rate out there, and it was like every year, 1/16 or 1/18 of people turns over, because that happened to be an area where people live for generations, right? They're not going to like sell their house. Whereas if you go somewhere like, I don't know, Edgemont Highlands or in town, or the national statistic is more like once every 7 years or 8 years. So it's always better to have a geo farm in a place that has a higher turnover rate, or just a place that nobody else goes. But let's do something different. I'm going to edit this. I figured out how to do this today. So cool. Hold on, crop and rotate. Let's see if I can do this different. Let's see, edit and create. I'm going to draw. I'm going to write. Oh, maybe I don't know how to do this. Oh my gosh. Let me figure this out before I get you on. I actually practiced this too. I am going to go back. And I wanted to write. Oh, well. How do I not know how to do this? Draw, add 3D effects. Maybe this is what I did. I am so sorry. I had this already, and now I would learn something new, and I said, they're going to be so impressed with me.
Just click on it and see what happens.
Okay, now it's not letting me. Now it's not letting me out. Here we go. Come on. Now it's not happy, and it's not even opening it.
Oh, boy.
Anyway, okay, absorption rate. So what absorption rate is, you're trying to figure out how long it takes for your property to sell. So I'm just going to tell you about it since it's not working on this thing. I should have had it already. Animated text. This was it. Yay. Okay. So now I'm going to do it. Share screen 2. So this is what's so funny. In a normal market, you can go to Edgemont Highlands or Los Ranchitos or any of these places, and you say, Mr. Seller, I know you really want X for your property, but it's pretty high. So let's do this. Let's do this little exercise. And you bring them the information, and you say, there are,
Hello, this is Leah.
I'm going to mute you, Leah. Let's see. There you go. There we go. Homes for sale now over sold in last. So let's say your seller says, I want to have, and it's like $100,000 more than the market would bear, right? And then they say, but I got to be out of here in 2 months or 3 months. So you can calculate this homes for sale now on the market over homes sold in the last, let's say 3 months equals. So in a normal market, you're going to get a number that you can say, you only have a 1 in 2 chance of getting out of here in the next 3 months. in your subdivision, there are 10 homes for sale and only 5 have sold in the last 3 months. So we want to be a little bit below what you're thinking so that we can make sure you're one of that 50% of homes that's selling every 3 months. So I went to do this exercise and I went to Edgemont Highlands, then I went to like Tween Lakes or somewhere that's way out there. And there's like nothing on the market. So if you do this exercise, it's gonna basically be saying, hey seller, you want to up your price? Yeah, just go as high as you want. So then I tried to do the exercise. I thought, well, maybe with lots. Let me go to Forest Lakes. Nothing ever sells out there. So I'm doing the exercise with lots and it's the same thing. There's been like 16 sales in the last year out in Forest Lakes for lots. Those things never used to sell. So it's actually showing you it's an amazing market. And that's why the sellers are getting so aggravated thinking we're not pricing their house high enough. But no, keep this somewhere. And if you have to come back for me to get it, that's what you want to know. So the turnover rate is something you just want to know if you're doing a geofarm, which is like right now, you should be thinking about that. But for homes for sale on the market now, and this can be a geographic area. So if you're doing like Hesperus, maybe it's somebody in, who was it? I was talking to, Malia, was it you? I think it was you that has the manufactured home out in Hesperus. That'd be a perfect example. Oh, somebody has a new listing. They were looking at going on the listing appointment. So let's say it's manufactured home out in the middle of nowhere, Hesperus, and they want to price their house really outrageously. You can do a geographic search with homes like yours, manufactured homes in all of Hesperus. Only there are 4 houses for sale right now and only 2 that sold in the last 3 months or 6 months or whatever you want to do. So you have a 1 in X chance of getting sold in the next few months. So we really can't price it too aggressively. So it's very big picture for your people. So do you have any questions about that? Just file it away somewhere because you will need it at some point when you're doing listing presentations. Any questions? That's all I had for you. So 2 very helpful tips.